In the heart of Guayaquil, Ecuador, lies a fortress most outsiders will never see. Behind walls stained by years of violence, corruption, and desperation, the Penitenciaría del Litoral operates on a law all its own. Here, prisoners rule the halls, guards tread carefully, and survival is a daily gamble. What you're about to witness is a world where loyalty can turn lethal, whispers in the shadows can decide life or death, and every corner hides a secret the authorities dare not confront. Tonight, we take you inside, through the gates, into the cells, and into the minds of those who live under the strictest rules of survival. This is not a story about crime. It's a story about power, fear, and the cost of life behind Ecuador's most dangerous walls. The Penitenciaría del Litoral isn't just a prison, it's a city. A sprawling complex of high concrete walls, watchtowers, and barbed wire. But the real threat doesn't come from the guards. It comes from the inmates themselves. In this place, every action, every glance, is measured. Friendships are currency, betrayals are commonplace, and alliances are forged in the fire of survival. Visitors and first-time guards are immediately struck by an eerie silence. But it's deceptive. Behind the walls, every hallway hums with tension. Inmates march with purpose, eyes darting, assessing everyone around them. Conversations are coded, movements calculated. One wrong step could trigger a chain of events that ends in violence before the sun sets. Even the guards are cautious. Many are veterans who've learned to respect the invisible rules of the prison, understanding that authority doesn't always belong to the uniform. It belongs to those who hold influence inside. Inside the cells, the reality is stark. Men are crammed together in spaces barely larger than closets, each one carrying a story that led him here. Some are hardened criminals, others are small-time offenders whose lives have spiraled out of control. Yet, in this environment, titles are irrelevant. Survival is determined by strength, cunning, and the ability to read human nature like an open book. The air is thick with tension, sweat, and fear. Conversations are whispered, yet every word carries weight. One inmate shares secrets with another, unaware that betrayal could be just a heartbeat away. And in this world, rumors travel faster than the guards ever could. A whispered warning, a stolen cigarette, or a perceived slight can ignite chaos within minutes. The most dangerous men aren't always the loudest. Often, it's the quiet ones, the ones who watch and wait, who hold the keys to survival and destruction. Penitenciaría del Litoral is a kingdom ruled not by law, but by influence. Inside these walls, gangs control entire blocks, dictating what can and cannot happen. Guards are often mere spectators, forced to negotiate with these internal rulers rather than enforce rules. Smuggling, contraband, and secret alliances flourish in the shadows. Power here is fluid. Yesterday's friend can be tomorrow's enemy. Loyalty is transactional, respect is earned with sweat and blood, and a single misstep can shift the balance of authority in an instant. And for those caught in the crossfire, there is no escape, only the hope of surviving another day. But the most chilling aspect? The prisoners themselves admit that the walls aren't just confining their bodies, they reconfining their minds. The prison has a way of reshaping men, stripping away morality, and replacing it with a relentless instinct for survival. In the Penitenciaría del Litoral, survival is the only law that matters. Among the hundreds of inmates, one story stands out, a tale of ambition, fear, and betrayal that would come to define life inside the prison. It begins with a man known only by his nickname, L.T. Barón, the Shark. Ruthless, strategic, and feared by both guards and inmates, his influence stretches further than most dare to imagine. L.T. Barón's rise wasn't sudden. It was calculated, built on alliances, threats, and acts of violence that cemented his reputation. But power inside the littoral is always temporary. Envy, ambition, and the constant struggle for dominance mean that even the most powerful are never safe. And this is where our story truly begins, not with the walls of the prison, but with the intricate game of survival, deception, and betrayal that rules every hallway, every cell, and every decision inside Penitenciaría del Litoral. A day inside the littoral begins long before sunrise. The first sounds aren't alarms or announcements, but whispers, the hushed warnings of men preparing for another day in a world where every interaction is measured, every glance can carry a threat. Some prisoners rise with careful routines, exercising discipline in the hope of survival. Others waste no time asserting dominance, hunting for weaknesses, seeking leverage. In the communal areas, chaos and order coexist in a delicate balance. Meals are served under the watchful eyes of guards, but it's the inmates themselves who enforce the real rules. Lines form not by authority, but by hierarchy. A newcomer is pushed aside, observed, assessed. The wrong word, a disrespectful gesture, or a glance that oversteps boundaries can lead to a fight, sometimes lethal. Every hallway, every yard, carries the potential for violence. And yet, beneath the tension, a strange rhythm persists. Men laugh, joke, and form bonds. For those who endure, survival is as much about alliances as it is about strength. But alliances here are fragile, often shattered the moment one man sees opportunity in another's weakness. Inside Littoral, the true rulers are the gangs. Each occupies its own block, enforcing rules, controlling contraband, and exacting justice as they see fit. The guards know better than to intervene too often. Doing so risks retaliation, or worse, being caught in the crossfire of a carefully orchestrated gang feud. The largest faction, known as Los Lobos, holds influence over most of the prison's corridors. Their reach extends to food, protection, and smuggling, but even their power isn't absolute. Smaller factions plot in the shadows, biding their time for the perfect moment to strike. And it's in these moments of tension that the most dangerous incidents occur: ambushes, beatings, and betrayals that leave permanent scars. L.T. Baron, however, navigates these dangerous waters with unmatched cunning. While others rely on brute force, he uses manipulation, intimidation, and carefully placed rumors to maintain control. His reputation alone is a weapon, one that keeps even the most aggressive inmates wary. Power inside Littoral isn't confined to inmates. Corruption runs deep among the guards, and in many cases, it is the grease that keeps the prison's wheels turning. Some guards turn a blind eye to smuggling, others profit from contraband or prisoner favors. But this complicity is a dangerous game. A guard who miscalculates risks not only their career, but their life. Prison politics are complex. A well-timed bribe can save a life, but a poorly placed one can ignite chaos. Guards who try to enforce rules too strictly, often undermined by colleagues or targeted by inmates. And those who attempt to play both sides can quickly find themselves isolated, exposed, or worse, inside these walls. Justice isn't handed down in courtrooms. It's enforced with whispers, threats, and sometimes blood. And every person, whether behind bars or wearing a uniform, must navigate the fine line between order and anarchy. It was a single whisper that set everything in motion. No one could have predicted that a casual conversation in the exercise yard would spiral into a conflict that changed the balance of power inside the prison. A low-level member of Los Lobos overheard a secret, a plan that could topple L.T. Braun's control. At first, it seemed insignificant. But in Littoral, information is power. That whisper traveled quickly, passed from one inmate to another, shifting allegiances and igniting suspicion. A plan that had been carefully hidden in the shadows was suddenly vulnerable. And when L.T. Braun learned of it, the reaction was swift and merciless. Survival inside Littoral demands vigilance, and anyone who underestimates the consequences of betrayal pays a heavy price. The tension in the prison began to rise. Factions that had coexisted cautiously now eyed each other with suspicion. Even the guards, normally indifferent to inmate politics, sensed that something was about to erupt. And in the midst of it all, L.T. Braun prepared his next move, knowing that only cunning, speed, and ruthlessness could maintain his reign. The first signs of violence were subtle: a shove in the hallway, a glare during mealtime, a whispered insult in the dorm. But the tension couldn't be contained. It culminated one afternoon in the central yard, where a confrontation between rival factions escalated into a full-blown brawl. Guards rushed in, but their presence did little to control the chaos. The inmates moved with precision, striking quickly and retreating into the shadows. Makeshift weapons appeared, and the yard became a battlefield. It was a terrifying reminder that control in Littoral is always tenuous, a delicate illusion maintained only by fear and influence. When the dust settled, injuries were treated quietly, no official reports were filed, and the hierarchy was subtly reshuffled. Those who emerged unscathed were marked as strong. Those who faltered were reminded that survival inside Littoral is a test of strategy, patience, and instinct. After the big showdown, things at Littoral prison got heavy. Not because of what happened, but what almost asterisk happened. No weapons, no serious injuries, but everyone got the message. The air grew thick with suspicion. Inmates were on edge, routines were off, and every conversation felt like walking on eggshells, short, sharp, and careful. The guards beefed up patrols, but they weren't stupid. They knew the real danger wasn't a sudden brawl in the yard. It was the quiet moves happening in the shadows. A shift in someone's tone, a weird huddle in the corner, a look that lingered just a second too long, it all meant something. And right now, the story being told was one of deep-seated distrust. Watching all this from a distance was L.T. Baron. He wasn't the type to yell or flex his muscles. His power came from knowing people, when to step in and when to let the pot simmer just long enough to see what rises to the top. He knew someone had orchestrated this whole mess, and that person was still out there, just waiting for the next spark to ignite the flame. He watched, and he waited. Change in a place like Litoral usually creeps in, but sometimes it walks right through the front gates in chains. That's what happened one morning. A new inmate arrived, a guy who immediately sparked curiosity. His name was Mateo, but everyone called him El Mirador, the Watcher, a nickname he earned for his uncanny ability to see through situations, to read people and places with unnerving accuracy. Mateo wasn't a big guy. He didn't swagger in like he owned the place, but he didn't have that nervous, wide-eyed look of a rookie either. He moved with a quiet, unsettling confidence, his eyes scanning everything, every face, every corridor, every subtle gesture. It was obvious he wasn't here by chance, and it was even more obvious that he already knew more about this prison than most guys who'd been here for years. The rumor mill started churning instantly. Some said he was from a rival crew on the outside. Others whispered he was a negotiator, a fixer sent to smooth things over. But the whispers didn't matter as much as the reactions he caused. Hardened inmates, men who never backed down, suddenly straightened up when he walked by. Even L.T. Baron, from his usual spot, looked up, a flicker of interest in his eyes. He sensed that Mateo's arrival was about to change the delicate power balance inside these walls. Mateo's first few days were a masterclass in observation. He kept to himself, speaking only when spoken to, and even then, his words were carefully chosen. He didn't try to join a crew or get involved in prison politics. He just watched. But his watching was different. It was the kind that made you feel like your thoughts were on display. He noticed the unspoken rules of the cell blocks, the secret alliances, the small favors traded over breakfast trays. Absolutely nothing escaped his gaze. Some guys got jumpy around him. Others tried to get close, to figure out his angle, but Mateo kept them at arm's length with vague, polite answers. He didn't threaten anyone. He didn't boast. He didn't ask questions. Yet, there was a certainty about him, a quiet authority that suggested he was putting together a puzzle that no one else even knew existed. L.T. Baron kept his distance, at first. A true leader never shows his curiosity too openly. But he could feel it. He knew Mateo wasn't just another con. There was something in the man's eyes that hinted at a deeper knowledge that could either bring stability to Litoral's fragile order or shatter it into a million pieces. Then, the tension in the prison began to shift again, but this time it was different. It wasn't loud or aggressive. It was subtle, almost invisible. Conversations between rival groups became shorter. Some inmates started avoiding their usual hangouts. Even the guards felt a strange, quiet unease, as if a secret meeting had taken place that changed all the rules. And somehow, Mateo seemed to be at the center of it all, but no one could figure out how. He wasn't meeting with leaders. He wasn't running with a crew. Yet, where he went, the dynamics changed. It was like people felt they were being seen for the first time, truly seen, as if someone finally understood the real source of the conflict brewing just beneath the surface. He spoke to a guard once, just a polite question about using the library. Nothing strange. But the way he noticed the guard's split-second hesitation before answering told him everything he needed to know. In a place like Litoral, hesitation is its own language, and Mateo was fluent. L.T. Baron knew the time for watching was over. Weeks had passed since the first signs of trouble, and now this new player, Mateo, had entered the game. As a strategist, he understood that silence could be just as dangerous as an open threat. And Mateo's silence was deafening. So, he made his move. During a normal moment in the yard, with guards nearby so no one could misinterpret it as a threat, L.T. Baron calmly walked up to Mateo. Their exchange was quiet, respectful, and short. To anyone watching from a distance, it looked like two men just nodding at each other. But for those paying close attention, it was a summit, a meeting of two powerful minds. What did they say? No one heard. But the feeling in the yard shifted once more after they parted ways. Whatever passed between them wasn't a challenge. It wasn't a surrender. It felt like an understanding. A silent agreement that something much bigger was at play, and neither of them was going to be caught off guard when it finally came to light. Rumors began to swirl almost immediately. In a place where information travels faster than footsteps, whispers became theories, and theories became stories. Inmates debated quietly in corners, wondering why a man like Matteo had entered Litoral with such calm certainty. Some believed he was here to negotiate peace between factions. Others thought he was sent to test the strength of the existing hierarchy. One thing was undeniable: nothing inside Penitenciaría del Litoral stays calm for long. A shift this quiet meant something big was coming. Whether it was a resolution or a storm, no one knew. And beneath it all, Lt. Baron, the prison's unofficial ruler, watched closely. His instincts had never failed him, but Matteo was a puzzle. Not a threat, not an ally, just a question mark with perfect timing. Late one evening, a guard known for his fairness passed by Matteo's block. What happened next wasn't dramatic. Just a simple, respectful conversation that lasted less than 2 minutes. Most inmates thought nothing of it, but for a few who understood the prison's deeper rhythm, it raised questions. Why that guard? And why did he seem grateful for something Matteo said? The next morning, the changes were subtle but noticeable. The guard's patrol route was different. He looked more focused. Something Matteo had said wasn't just advice, it was a warning. And it was beginning to ripple through the prison in ways no one could yet see. You see, Matteo's brilliance wasn't in strength or reputation. It was in his ability to see patterns where others saw only chaos. He noticed small inconsistencies: how certain inmates avoided a section of the yard at specific hours, how some conversations only happened when a particular guard wasn't on duty. He wasn't looking at the prison as a battleground. He was analyzing it like a puzzle. He realized the tension wasn't random. Someone was orchestrating it. Lt. Baron felt it too. The unease spreading wasn't caused by Matteo. Matteo was just the first to notice it. A hidden force was pushing inmates toward mistrust, nudging rival groups closer to conflict. Miscommunications, misplaced warnings, rumors appearing at just the right time. None of it was natural. Someone was trying to dismantle the delicate balance Lt. Baron had maintained. On a quiet afternoon in the library, Matteo finally put the pieces together. He wasn't there to challenge Lt. Baron. He had been sent by a higher authority from the outside, his purpose to identify the hidden catalyst behind the unrest before it exploded. And what he uncovered wasn't just surprising, it was alarming. The person orchestrating the chaos wasn't an inmate at all. For days, Matteo had been piecing together fragments of conversations, guard routines, and inmate behavior. But the breakthrough didn't come from a document or a rumor. It came from noticing a pattern in silence, specifically, whose silence changed from one week to the next. There was a guard named Torres. Quiet, efficient, and known for following the rules to the letter. But recently, something was off. Torres started appearing in areas he had no reason to patrol. He listened more than he spoke, and prisoners who once avoided him now cautiously sought him out, as if he held information they needed. Matteo recognized the pattern instantly. This wasn't manipulation coming from the inmates, it was influence from above, someone instructing Torres to subtly shift the prison's energy. The goal wasn't to cause chaos outright, but to weaken trust, heighten uncertainty, and create division. A controlled tension. But why? And for whom? One evening, under the soft glow of the corridor lights, Matteo crossed paths with Lt. Baron. The encounter seemed casual, but both men knew it was intentional. In Litoral, real conversations happened quietly, behind neutral expressions. Lt. Baron spoke first, his voice low and steady. You see things others don't. It wasn't a compliment, it was a strategic acknowledgement. Matteo responded with equal calm. You've sensed it too. Someone is shaping the prison's mood. For the first time, the two men shared the same objective: to identify the source of this subtle disruption. Their alliance wasn't formal or friendly. It was necessary. Both understood that maintaining stability required awareness, and neither could afford to let an unseen hand rewrite the prison's balance of power. Over the next several days, Matteo quietly monitored the guards. Torres wasn't acting alone. Two others, Silva and Mendoza, also showed slight changes in behavior. They communicated differently, their patrols were no longer predictable, and their presence around certain inmates became more intentional. But what made Matteo suspicious wasn't what they were doing, it was what they were avoiding. They stayed away from certain blocks entirely, blocks where tensions were already high. It was almost as if they wanted those areas to become unstable. Lt. Baron confirmed something crucial. These guards had recently been reassigned, placed into positions that influenced the prison's internal communication without drawing attention. Someone was orchestrating these changes slowly, subtly, professionally, not for personal gain, but for a purpose deeper than simple corruption. One afternoon, while reviewing old visitor logs in the library, documents most inmates ignored, Mateo noticed something unusual. A specific name appeared repeatedly next to Torres and Mendoza's schedules. It wasn't a family member, a lawyer, or an official inspector. The visitor was listed simply as consultant. No title, no agency, just a name and a signature that changed slightly with each visit, suggesting someone experienced in disguising their identity. The visits lined up perfectly with the shifts in guard behavior and the spread of disruptive rumors. But the visitor's purpose only became clear when Mateo noticed one final detail. The consultant always visited asterisk after asterisk periods of unrest, never before. That meant they weren't preventing problems, they were monitoring them. When Mateo discreetly shared his findings with Lt. Baron, the reaction was immediate, not explosive, but intensely focused. Lt. Baron had always believed the greatest threats came from within the prison walls. But this was different. An external influence, masked as an advisor, was intentionally allowing tension to build. Someone was studying the prison like a living organism, observing how unrest spread, how factions reacted, and how far the system could be pushed before breaking. This wasn't about control. It was about data, about understanding instability on a deeper level. For the first time in years, Lt. Baron felt something unfamiliar, uncertainty. He realized he wasn't dealing with a rival, a spy, or a rebellious inmate. He was dealing with an agenda he couldn't see, a purpose he couldn't read. The next morning, the prison woke to a surprise inspection, one that seemed targeted rather than random. Guards checked lockers, bunks, and common areas, focusing on specific blocks and individuals. Something had changed. The hidden hand behind the curtain had sensed that someone was getting close to the truth. And rather than hide, they tightened their control. Mateo understood the message immediately. You're being watched. But what the orchestrator didn't realize was that Mateo wasn't working alone anymore. Lt. Baron's quiet influence ensured that important details were protected and that the prisoners who supported stability were prepared to adapt. The game had shifted. The unseen force had made its move. And now, Mateo and Lt. Baron had to make theirs, carefully, strategically, and without alerting the very person studying the prison's behavior. Jordan sits on an empty bench, the dim corridor light catching the dust motes dancing in the air. In his hands, he holds the prison's history, old logbooks, their pages worn and thin. At first, they're just what you'd expect, routine notes about inspections, repairs, and the daily grind inside Penitenciaría del Litoral. But as he digs deeper, a pattern starts to emerge, faint but persistent. Several entries, penned years apart by different guards, all mention the same strange occurrences. Unexplained power dips that last for just a moment. Random door malfunctions in the same wing. Faint, metallic noises echoing from the ventilation system. Nothing dramatic, nothing that would raise a major alarm. Just whispers in the walls, easily dismissed as glitches in an old building. But the pattern is undeniable. It always happens in the same section of the prison, and always around the same time of year. Jordan marks the pages, a chill running down his spine. He's stumbled onto a long-running mystery, a secret the prison itself has kept for decades. He can feel the weight of its untold stories pressing in, not of violence, but of secrets lost to time. He knows he's on the verge of uncovering something important, something that's been hiding in plain sight all along. As Jordan pieces together the fragments from the logbooks, the seemingly random incidents begin to connect. The power dips, the malfunctioning doors, they aren't just technical glitches. He cross-references the locations with Mateo's meticulous notes on prison dynamics. It's as if the prison's physical structure has a pulse, a rhythm that syncs with the social currents flowing through its corridors. Suddenly, Mateo's observations make perfect sense. The simmering tensions, the invisible lines of power, the subtle influence of certain guards and outside forces, it all interacts with the physical space. Every cell block, every courtyard, every dimly lit hallway is a piece of a much larger, living puzzle. For the first time, Jordan sees Penitenciaría del Litoral not as a building, but as a complex, breathing organism. It has its own rules, its own logic, existing far beyond the daily conflicts and fragile alliances of the men inside. Understanding these hidden connections is the key. It's not about brute force or overt power. It's about knowing the secret language of the prison, the invisible logic that governs every single moment. This knowledge could change everything for guards, inmates, and anyone who steps inside these walls. Meanwhile, a similar realization dawns on two of the prison's most powerful figures. Both Mateo, the quiet observer, and L.T. Baron, the seasoned kingpin, now understand a crucial truth. The growing unrest in Litoral isn't random. It's being carefully orchestrated from the outside, a subtle and precise campaign to destabilize the prison. But a direct confrontation would be a disaster, playing right into the hands of whoever is pulling the strings. So, they choose a different path. A quieter, more calculated approach. They begin to communicate without words. A small gesture in the yard, a carefully chosen phrase passed through a trusted intermediary, the strategic placement of allies in key positions. To everyone else, it's just another day. No one outside the prison notices. No one inside suspects a thing. A silent alliance is forged, built not on friendship, but on mutual respect and a shared goal, preserving the delicate balance of their world. L.T. Baron brings his unparalleled knowledge of the prison social hierarchies, its history, its fears. Mateo contributes his sharp intellect, his ability to see patterns and predict outcomes. Together, they become the prison's unseen stabilizers. They start to anticipate moves before they happen, sensing a brewing conflict and diffusing it before it can ignite. Even the guards notice the change, though they can't explain it. They report that certain cell blocks seem calmer, daily routines run smoother, and violent flare-ups are becoming less frequent. Influence inside Litoral is no longer just about fear or force. It has evolved into something more sophisticated: strategy, foresight, and a deep understanding of the invisible rules that govern life behind bars. For the first time in months, the entire prison seems to be holding its breath, a tense, quiet pause before the next chapter begins. The mystery of the outside influence, the so-called consultant who is subtly manipulating guard behavior and stoking tensions, finally unravels. Through Mateo's persistent investigation and L.T. Baron's deep network of information, the truth is revealed, and it's far more complex than they ever imagined. The consultant wasn't a villain trying to incite a riot. They were part of a high-level governmental study. Their mission wasn't to destroy, but to observe, to document. This entire operation was an experiment. The government wanted to understand the intricate social dynamics of a place like Litoral to inform future reforms, improve rehabilitation programs, and develop new inmate management strategies across the country. Every unexplained surge of tension, every strategic shift among the inmates, every ripple of fear had been carefully monitored and analyzed. The goal was to test the system, to find its breaking points, and to see where targeted interventions could bring stability or improvement. This revelation reframes everything. The fear, the whispers, the silent battles for control, they weren't just part of a power struggle. They were data points in a massive, real-world study of human behavior under the most extreme conditions imaginable. With the consultant's true agenda revealed, a new sense of understanding settles over Litoral. The quiet alliance between L.T. Baron and Mateo shifts its purpose. They are no longer on the defensive, reacting to an unknown threat. Now, they are active participants in maintaining the prison's equilibrium. They act as quiet stabilizers, managing tensions, guiding alliances, and preserving order without resorting to confrontation or violence. They've learned the game, and now they are playing it better than anyone. The effects are tangible. Inmates notice a subtle but pervasive calm. The guards find their operations running smoother than ever before. For the first time in a long time, the prison's rhythm feels aligned. This change didn't come from stricter rules or more guards. It came from influence exercised through understanding. Litoral hasn't been magically transformed, but the invisible currents that once drove it toward chaos are now balanced. Those who have learned to read these currents, Mateo, L.T. Baron, and even the unseen consultant, now recognize that true control isn't about force. It's about patience, observation, and the quiet application of knowledge. As Jordan documents these final events, he reflects on the profound lessons he's witnessed. Penitenciaría del Litoral is so much more than a maximum security prison. It's a microcosm of society, a complex ecosystem of relationships, strategies, and raw survival instincts. Through the eyes of Mateo and L.T. Baron, he has seen that true influence often comes from understanding, not aggression. He's learned that stability is rarely achieved through loud declarations or grand gestures, but is built quietly, through careful observation and deliberate strategy. And he's discovered that even in the harshest, most unforgiving environments, human behavior can be guided by patience and insight. The story of Litoral is a powerful reminder for all of us. The most dangerous battles are not always the ones we can see, and the most powerful changes are not always the ones that make the most noise. As the sun sets, casting long shadows across the sprawling walls of the prison, a fragile but meaningful calm lingers in the air. Inside, life goes on. The routines, the whispers, the ever-shifting alliances continue. L.T. Buron walks through the yard, his eyes scanning everything, always observing, always calculating. Mateo continues to fill his notebooks, connecting dots that no one else can see. And the consultant, forever unseen, continues their work, their observations shaping decisions that will be felt for years to come. What happened inside Penitenciaría del Litoral is more than a story of crime and conflict. It's a story of strategy, human nature, and the invisible threads that connect us all. It proves that even in the most extreme circumstances, those who understand the rules can navigate their world with clarity, insight, and respect. And that is the true, untold story from inside Ecuador's most infamous fortress. Thank you for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more deep dives into the world's most hidden places.